Hey guys, and welcome to one more episode of Builder Nation. For today's session, we have Billy Thalheimer, co-founder and CEO at REGENT, a company on a mission to connect the coast through sustainable travel technology. So welcome, Billy. Super happy to have you here today.
Thanks, Elisa. Super happy to be here.
Okay, so before we start this interview, why don't we let our main guest introduce himself? Maybe, Billy, if you can please share a little bit about you, about your background, maybe about the company.
Sure thing. So I'm Billy Thalheimer, co-founder and CEO at REGENT. My background is actually as an aerospace engineer. So I spent my undergrad and grad at MIT working on sort of advanced aircraft design, multidisciplinary optimization, was writing sort of design codes. Spent some time in commercial space, Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, had a great time there, but decided I liked mobility and transportation better. So I found my way back to aviation, wound up at a company called Aurora Flight Sciences, which was working on sort of electric aircraft in these cool new configurations. And this was right around the time when this eVTOL movement, so electric vertical takeoff and landing, these air taxis were popping up. Companies like Joby and Lilium and Archer were starting to pop up, and Boeing, the largest aerospace company in the world, didn't have a horse in the race. So they acquired Aurora. They said, go build one. So that's what we did. I started engineering there. I led the conceptual design and performance modeling of this vehicle. So this is called the passenger air vehicle, or the PAV, which we went from basically a code on my computer to a 2,000-pound autonomous electric aircraft in about 13 months. So super fun, fast program. I transitioned into program management, and then after a while into business development. And so sort of my time at Aurora Flight Sciences and Boeing was really unique in that I got the opportunity to see this new space, this electrification of aviation space, from the lenses of an engineer, a program manager, a business developer. I'm a private pilot, so I've also been able to see the lens of, in the cockpit, in the national airspace. And sort of formed the thesis while I was doing all this work that, electrifying airplanes is really hard. The hard parts about it are that, you have this certification pathway that takes a decade and $1 billion. Still not one commercial passenger has flown on an electric aircraft, and electric cars are ubiquitous. It's crazy. They are everywhere. So that certification pathway is a huge, huge hurdle. And additionally, with existing battery technology, you can't go that far. Yes, we can get people up in the air, but when you think about how do you actually operate these things and reserve fuels and the batteries get old, you don't go that far. And so what myself and my co-founder, Mike Klinker, who is also an MIT alumni, also at Aurora Flight Sciences, what we decided to do when we founded REGENT was say, we want to disrupt regional mobility. We want to disrupt routes like LA to San Francisco, Boston to New York. And we want to do that with an electric vehicle with all these great benefits, sustainable, low cost, low noise, high redundancy, all these awesome things. But we want to do it with existing battery technology, and we still want to figure out a way to go these long routes. And we want to do it under a different certification pathway. And so that's what we did when we designed the Sea Glider and founded REGENT about 18 months ago.
Wow, that's nothing. 18 months ago, besides in the middle of the pandemic, right? The middle of 2020. So yes. How was the first idea you were pitched, or how did you get your first investors? Wasn't it hard?
Yes, no, definitely, taking that leap from, a cushy engineering job and a guaranteed paycheck to zero paycheck and just finding your own way is definitely difficult. We sort of got to the point where we said, you know what, we're ready to do this. We need to sort of sever the tie if we really want to explore this, if we want to do this and sort of own all the IP from it. So we left Boeing. We started doing, more of the engineering, more of the business development. We said, okay, we think there's something here. Now, when we were thinking about this idea, our wife said, okay, this is cool. You guys are following your dreams. We'll give you 5 months. Okay. And by the end of month 3, if you don't have any money, you got to start looking for a new job. And by the end of month 5, you have to have a new job. And we're like, okay, that's very reasonable to go without salary for that long. So we left Aurora and Boeing in November of 2020. And Christmas was coming up, and so our wives made us custom T-shirts that said, because salaries are overrated. This is the founder lifestyle. But actually, we applied. So we sort of went through our network, and we found people that had built startups before or invested before, and we just asked everyone in the world, what do you think of this pitch deck? What makes sense to you? What doesn't? Would you invest in this? Why or why not? And so one of them advised us to apply to Y Combinator. Now, we had missed the deadline already, but we certainly knew about the prestige of Y Combinator. So we wrote the application, applied late, and we're actually in the program. We got accepted actually on my co-founder's birthday in mid-December. And so by the time we got our Christmas presents, these custom shirts that said salary is overrated, we had already raised money, and we're paying ourselves a small salary.
Wow, this is such a great story. I mean, it sounds like it came out of a fairy tale. Wow, it's amazing.
It felt like that, but I mean, it was definitely like that first step where you're like, I'm done with the paycheck for now, and we're gonna go out on our own and try to find money. Was definitely, I mean, that was a big step. So you look backward and it's like all these things worked out, and that's amazing. And I attribute a lot of it to the support of our wives and our extended support network, to the advisement of this network we had built, and people, former founders and investors and everyone that sort of held our hands and helped us through this, as this was our first rodeo. But no, it was a great way to start.
It is a great story indeed. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so back to the airplane. I know that it's all electric vehicles, right? With no emission. I mean, for a mortal like me, it sounds expensive. So how is it that it's, it decreases the cost of transportation?
Yeah, so that's the best part about electric, really any electric propulsion system. You think about a Tesla versus a normal car, and the maintenance costs of a Tesla are about actually a third of a normal car. And actually most of the maintenance events for a Tesla are like computer screens and chips and stuff, but the motors don't wear out, the batteries, these are like fixed systems. They don't have moving parts. When you think about what ages on an airplane, airplanes age by the cycle. So when you take off, you pressurize the cabin, so you expand the cabin, and then you go back down and they shrink again. So you're constantly expanding and contracting the cabin. When you think about the engines, they're heating up, as they run, and then they're cooling down when they land. And there's all these moving parts. And so as you heat up and cool down, they expand and contract, and they rub against each other. You think about the landing gear, they're impacting the pavement every time you land. So all of these fatigue events happen cyclically, and it's not the best way to do it. It makes a lot of sense when you're flying very long ranges, right? Because those cycles are very long. But if you're doing very short cycles, 100, 200, 300 miles, you're going to do many cycles in a day. And so you're actually going to age out your assets really quickly. And so that, the way that the operator, the airline, or even a ferry company pays for that is through maintenance costs, and it becomes very expensive. So what you want for a short range system is something that's low altitude, so unpressurized, and something that's electric, so that it actually ages by the hour. There's really no moving parts. It's just a solid state battery. You have a bunch of wires, they go out to the motors. The only moving parts in the motor are the motor bearings, and that's a very easy thing. You sort of just pop off the cap and replace the motor bearings or inspect it. And so your maintenance costs drop drastically. And then the other part is your fuel cost, right? So fuel is very expensive, getting more and more expensive. Given geopolitical environments, it's even more expensive. And of course, with the sustainability tailwinds, it's being taxed or even outright capped and banned, like we're seeing in California and in other states, actually in New York, the actual banning of non-electric cars, which can certainly extend to other modes. So actually, this makes the vehicle far more affordable to have an all-electric propulsion system. Our maintenance costs are lower, our fuel cost is lower, our taxes are lower, and in so doing, we can actually offer something with the speed of an aircraft that's half the cost.
Wow, that's amazing. And how long did it take you guys in order to develop this propulsion system? Like, is it really hard in order to build?
Well, that's sort of the best part. I think some of the best companies, they say, you build on the shoulders of giants. And so really the only reason we could even envision something like an all-electric sea glider now is because we've had such advances in motor technology and battery technology because of the electric cars, because of the electric aircraft in that industry where Mike and I and a lot of our founding team came from. So, we can now go out and buy motors and batteries from third-party vendors and hook them together. And obviously there's some intricacies in how you design that system and manage heat of that system and things like that. But, at the bare bones, like we don't need to design and build the motor. We can buy it and we can buy the batteries, and these are available. And so now we can build new configurations that, use physics in new ways.
Okay. Wow. And I was actually reading one of an article of yours and about REGENT, and I was really curious to ask about the wave tolerance. So how does that work in REGENT?
Yeah, so this actually was sort of a key, founding principle, a key aspect of the Sea Glider value proposition as a differentiator from previous craft. So you think about a seaplane or a flying boat, you're taking off and landing from a hull or from the floats, right? They're flat bottomed, they're skipping off the waves as you come up to speed and certainly land. I don't know if you've ever been on one, but even if you've been on, a motorboat or a fast boat before, going over the waves, horribly uncomfortable. And so if you think about how do you accelerate up to takeoff speed, at best it's uncomfortable, at worst you can't take off at all because the waves are too high. So for our system, for our water-based flying machine that we call a sea glider, the key differentiation was to give it that wave tolerance, and that's what we did with hydrofoils. So we're using technology from the America's Cup, which is the absolute cream of the crop in terms of racing technology in the maritime world. It's sort of like the F1 racing of maritime. And so these hydrofoils, they're underwater wings. So they provide lift underwater. They lift up the vehicle on stilts. So if you watch some of the videos on our website, you'll see it moving around the surface of the water with these submerged foils, making no wake, being incredibly efficient, highly maneuverable, and most of all, wave tolerant. So as long as the foils stay submerged, the hull is above the waves can go in between it. So with this quarter scale prototype that you see flying over my shoulder, and that we have videos of online, you can do between about 1 foot to 1.5 feet of wave tolerance. So when we multiply the size by 4, that's about 4 to 6 feet of wave tolerance, where if you're riding on board that vessel, it is totally comfortable, totally maneuverable, totally safe. And so we do that through the harbor. We're just a hydrofoil ferry in the harbor. When we get to the edge of the harbor, that's when we take off onto our wing, when the traffic dies down, and we fly at aircraft speeds, again, always within a wingspan of the surface of the water en route to our destination.
I know that you guys can have like 12 passengers and the 2 guys on the cabin. So is there a specific license in order to drive one of your sea gliders that people need to have?
Yeah, so sea gliders are under maritime jurisdiction. They're regulated by the Coast Guard, so they're a US flagged vessel. Internationally, we've been working with Bureau Veritas, which is a classification society, and actually recently announced that we achieved our first certification milestone, the approval in principle with Bureau Veritas. So, we take this one step further. It's not just that we're certifying the vehicle under maritime jurisdiction, we're actually certifying the captains under maritime jurisdiction as well, which makes sense because we're staying within a wingspan of the surface of the water at all times, dock to dock, over water exclusively. Really, we're never going above the height of a sailboat mast. So we operate in the maritime environment. We're not going to airports. We're not going into air traffic or airspace. And so what we've done on the REGENT team is we've taken sort of the latest and greatest in sensors and flight controls, and we've taken all of the airplaney stuff out of the system and automated it. So your roll control, your pitch control, your altitude control, your coordination of the takeoff and landings, like all this stuff you train pilots for is now automated by the digital flight control system, super safe. And so the only thing that the captain of this vessel does is boat controls, left and right, fast and slow. And again, the transitions between the float, foil, and fly modes are automated. So coming back to your question, I know sort of a long roundabout way of answering it, but
Perfect, thank you.
the captains of the sea gliders will be maritime certified, so they'll be maritime masters, and then they'll get a sea glider endorsement, which is a 6 to 8 week program, so really fast, where you familiarize yourself with the sea glider technology specifically, do some safety courses, and then you're sort of ready to go. So that makes it similar to like a high-speed craft or even a hovercraft rating, where you get sort of your baseline maritime master rating, and then you get a specific craft endorsement.
Wow, really interesting. Wow, I had no idea. Okay. And talking about the customers, let's say, like, who are some of the customers that you guys have now, and how are you planning on expanding?
Yeah, so our customers are primarily airlines and ferry companies. Sort of makes sense. These are the operators that are doing these coastal or overwater routes today. Regent is the OEM. We're sort of like the Boeing or the Airbus of sea gliders, right? We build sea gliders, we offer sea glider maintenance services, and we engage in that training. We offer those training courses for the sea glider captains. So our customers, one of our earliest customers and a firm delivery holder with firm deposits down is Southern Airways Express, that also operates as Mokulele. So with them, we're looking at operating environments like the Hawaiian Islands, going between those islands, for which really aircraft is the only way you can do it today. The East Coast of the US as well, New York, Miami, markets like that. Additionally, another really cool customer we have is Brittany Ferries, one of our earlier customers as well. They do the English Channel crossing route. We recently announced an order with FRS Ferries, which is one of the only global operators of ferries. So I'm really keen to explore sea glider operations in multiple parts of the world. And then one other I want to highlight is Ocean Flyer in New Zealand. New Zealand's sort of similar to Hawaii, a great, archipelagic nation, lots of need for this inter-island mobility. And so Ocean Flyer was actually a bespoke sea glider line, really one of the world's first dedicated sea glider lines. Ocean Flyer was set up and incorporated to operate sea gliders.
Hopefully someday I will get to ride in one of them, hopefully. And last but not least, do you have any advice for future entrepreneurs or people starting on this path?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we did well, or that served us well, was just asking everyone for advice and not to sugarcoat that advice. Like go into them with your initial pitch deck saying, what is wrong with this? What would cause you not to invest? When you're founding something, you want to expose yourself to all of the negative feedback, so that when it's sort of like practice like you play, right? You want to see every question in the book so that you already have the answer to it rehearsed, or you have a slide about it, so that when you actually go to pitch the investor that does have money, you're totally prepared for it. I remember when we were practicing for our YC interview, our Y Combinator interview, you only have 10 minutes. And so what we would do is we'd practice, and our advisors would interrupt us, and they would throw everything at us. And sometimes they would play the nice one, and sometimes they'd play the mean one, and sometimes they'd play the distracted one or the uninterested one. And it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. But you subject yourself to that pain yourself, so that when you actually go out there and play, it's so much easier. So I'd absolutely recommend for founders ready to make that leap, just expose yourself to all the crap you can, because when you actually go for the pitch, it'll be much easier.
Wow, thank you so much for that great advice, and thank you so much for being here, Billy, for taking the time, for sharing your experiences. Where can people find you? Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find us online, www.regentcraft.com, REGENT. It's actually an acronym, Regional Electric Ground Effect Nautical Transport, if you didn't know. So regentcraft.com. We're on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn @RegentCraft. And then, we're actually based in Rhode Island. We just moved to Rhode Island and we're testing there now. So for people looking to help us build sea gliders and shape the future of sustainable maritime transportation, we have job listings on our website. We'd love for you to come out and meet at our facilities too.
Wow, amazing. I'm pretty sure that most of the engineers hearing us right now are super excited about this news. So thank you so much. And remember, guys, that you can also find more information, interesting articles, interesting interviews direct on our website, controlhub.com/builder-nation. We would love to hear from you. And once again, Billy, thank you so much for being here, for taking the time. Thank you so much for sharing this great advice and the story of the company.
Lisa, thanks so much.